It's knowledge. The kind of knowledge that doesn't come from books, but from living the same river night after night. A mainstream historical fact surfaces again. In ancient Nubia and Egypt, boats were often made from wood planks lashed together, sometimes with reeds or papyrus elements, and they could be surprisingly fragile if they struck rocks or got caught in strong currents. The Nile looks calm from a distance, but it's full of hazards. Submerged stones, shifting sandbanks, whirlpools near bends. At night, those hazards become invisible. So the riverkeepers listen. They watch for patterns in the water. They memorize the river like you memorize the layout of your bedroom in the dark. The man's story ends with a quiet laugh, and another riverkeeper adds something, making the group chuckle softly. You don't know the joke, but you laugh anyway, because being part of the group feels safer than being the outsider. And honestly, laughing quietly in a small boat under the stars feels like one of the most human things imaginable. People have always done this. Thousands of years ago, under the same sky, they whispered jokes while trying not to die. The boat drifts toward a small dock, just a rough wooden platform near the bank. Hermack gestures for the boat to slow. Another man hops out silently, landing in shallow water with barely a splash. He checks something tied to the dock, a rope, a knot, maybe a marker line. Then he holds up a small object. A carved piece of wood, worn smooth. A signal. You watch them exchange murmured words, and you understand. The riverkeepers are communicating with each other, leaving markers, checking signs. It's like a low-tech patrol network. The object is returned to its place, and the man climbs back into the boat. You can't help but admire the efficiency. No fuss, no ceremony, just steady work. The lamp flame flickers as the breeze shifts. The air smells more strongly of water now, and you catch a hint of something metallic, like damp stone. The night deepens. The stars brighten, and as the boat glides onward, you begin to sense the larger shape of the river watch. It's not a single group in a single boat. It's a system. Villages along the Nile rely on these watchers the way modern towns rely on streetlights and locks. The watchers protect trade, warn of dangers, guide travelers, and keep the river's moods from becoming disasters. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a sleepy thought forms. While everyone else sleeps, these people are keeping the world from falling apart, which is a slightly dramatic way of saying they're making sure no one's boat gets eaten by a hippo. But still, counts. The boat moves into a darker stretch of river, away from the village lights. The banks become silhouettes. The reeds whisper. The water laps softly against the hull. You feel the calm settle over you again, the tension easing. The riverkeepers resume their quiet scanning. One watches the far bank. One watches the water ahead. Hermack watches you for a moment, then turns away, satisfied that you're not going to fling yourself overboard in panic. You try to breathe slowly, matching the rhythm of the boat. And you realize you're learning the first true skill of the night watch. Not how to fight, not how to run, but how to stay steady, even when the river is full of unseen things. The farther you drift from the village, the more the river seems to widen, not physically but emotionally. The darkness feels deeper here, less interrupted. The banks pull back into shadow, and the Nile becomes a slow-moving sheet of black glass, broken only by starlight and the faint shimmer of the moon's reflection. The boat moves at a careful pace, not slow enough to feel hesitant, not fast enough to feel rushed, just steady, intentional. Like someone walking through a familiar room with the lights off, trusting memory over sight. Hermack adjusts the angle of the pole and presses it into the riverbed. You feel the resistance through the wood, the subtle vibration as it scrapes against sand or stone. He listens, not just with his ears, but with his hands. The way the pole pushes back tells him what kind of ground lies beneath you. You try to imitate the focus, leaning forward, peering into the darkness as if the river might suddenly reveal its secrets out of politeness. It does not. Instead, the sky becomes the real guide. Hermack tilts his head upward, eyes scanning the stars. You follow his gaze, and suddenly the heavens feel closer than the water below. The Milky Way stretches faintly across the sky like spilled flour. Bright points cluster and separate, forming patterns you almost recognize. Almost. A mainstream historical fact slides into place here, as natural as the river itself. Ancient Nile cultures, both Nubian and Egyptian, used the stars extensively for navigation and timekeeping. Certain constellations, like Orion, held deep religious and practical significance. The rising and setting of stars helped mark seasons, floods, and the passage of hours during the night. Hermack points to a cluster of stars low on the horizon. You don't know their names, but you can tell they matter. He traces a slow line in the air, then taps the pole against the boat's edge. Direction. The river curves gently here, and the current changes. You can feel it, not as a jolt, but as a subtle sideways pull, like the water is trying to guide you somewhere of its own choosing. The riverkeepers adjust without speaking. One shifts his weight, another changes the angle of his pole. The boat responds smoothly, gliding along a safer path. This is where you realize navigation at night isn't about seeing where you're going. It's about knowing where not to go. Hermack murmurs a word that sounds like a place name. He gestures toward a darker patch of water near the far bank. It looks no different to you, just darker. He explains patiently that the current there drops suddenly. A hidden dip, a place where boats can lose control, especially if they're heavy with cargo. You nod, pretending you totally would have spotted that on your own. Historians still argue whether ancient river navigation relied more heavily on star positions or on intimate, local knowledge passed orally through generations. Standing here, it feels like the answer is both and also vibes. The boat glides past the dangerous patch without incident. You feel a quiet pride, as if you personally contributed to not dying. The stars seem brighter now, or maybe your eyes are just adjusting. You notice how the constellations slowly shift as time passes. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but it's there. The sky is moving, just like the river. One of the riverkeepers begins to hum. It's low, steady, almost like a drone. Not a song meant to entertain. More like a sound meant to anchor. You feel it in your chest more than you hear it. The hum isn't random. It has a rhythm, a pulse. You suspect it's helping them keep track of time. Not in minutes or hours, but in cycles. Verses. Breaths. A quirky tidbit floats into your awareness. Some scholars believe that night workers along the Nile use songs, chants, or rhythmic patterns to mark time during watches, especially before mechanical timekeeping devices became common. These rhythms helped prevent drifting into sleep and created a shared sense of progression through the night, which is honestly smarter than your current method of timekeeping, which is vibes and hope. The boat approaches a narrow stretch of river, where rocky outcrops push closer to the water. The current quickens slightly here, squeezing through the tighter space. You hear the water change its voice. Less soft lapping, more murmured urgency. Hermack straightens, alert. He adjusts the pole, pressing harder now. The others follow suit. Their movements are synchronized, practiced. You hold onto the edge of the boat, your fingers brushing the rough wood. It's cool and damp, grounding. The stars overhead seem to narrow too, framed by the dark shapes of rock. You feel smaller here, more aware of your place in the landscape. A ripple breaks the surface ahead. Not large, not dramatic, just enough to catch your attention. You tense. Hermack glances at you, then at the water, then back at the stars. He shakes his head slightly. Fish, he murmurs. You relax about 12%. The boat passes through the narrow stretch without trouble. The current eases. The river opens again, wide and calm. Someone exhales softly. You realize it's you. A light joke slips into the quiet. You whisper, "So, if I fall in, do the stars guide me back out?" One of the riverkeepers snorts quietly. Another shakes his head, smiling. Hermack gives you a look that says, "Please don't test that theory." The night watch continues, guided by water and sky. You begin to feel the rhythm of it, the way attention rises and falls, the way silence stretches without becoming uncomfortable. You think about how many generations have done this exact thing. How many nights people stood under these same stars, reading the river like a story they already knew by heart. The stars don't rush. The river doesn't rush. And slowly, neither do you. The boat glides onward, steady and sure, guided by constellations, currents, and quiet confidence. And somewhere between the sky and the water, you start to feel like you belong here, at least enough to not immediately mess everything up. Which honestly is progress. The river bends again, gently this time, and the dark shapes of mud brick houses reappear along the bank. You're approaching another village, smaller than the last, quieter too. No lamps flicker here. No late cooking fires glow. This place has already folded itself into sleep. The Nile carries you past it like a secret. You can smell the village before you can see it properly. Warm earth, old smoke, livestock, that faint, comforting scent of grain stored in clay jars. It's the smell of people who finished their day hours ago and trusted someone else to keep watch. You glance toward the shoreline. The houses sit low, half blended into the darkness, their flat roofs barely visible against the night sky. Some have small fences made from reeds or branches, corralling goats or sheep. The animals are quiet now, pressed close together, breathing slow. A dog lifts its head as your boat passes. It doesn't bark. It just watches, ears twitching, then settles back down. Hermack notices your gaze and gives a small nod. This village knows the riverkeepers, knows the sound of their poles, the rhythm of their movement. You're not strangers here. You're part of the background noise of safety. A mainstream historical fact fits gently into the moment. Nubian villages along the Nile were typically built close to the river but slightly elevated, protecting them from seasonal flooding while keeping water access easy. These communities relied on the river for drinking water, irrigation, fishing, and transport, making night protection essential. You imagine the people sleeping inside those mud brick walls, children curled up on mats, elders breathing softly, someone snoring loud enough to become a local legend. None of them can see you, but they sleep easier because you're here. The boat slows slightly as you pass the village's small dock. It's little more than a wooden platform with a rope tied around a post. No boats are moored tonight. Everything is quiet. One of the riverkeepers raises his pole and taps it gently against the water. Once, twice. A signal. You don't know to whom. Maybe to someone on shore. Maybe to the river itself. No response comes. That's a good thing. You drift onward, and the village fades behind you, swallowed by darkness and palm silhouettes. The Nile opens again, broad and unbothered. The quiet stretches, but it's not empty. It's full of tiny sounds. Insects ticking, water slipping past the hull, the faint rustle of reeds in the breeze. Somewhere far away, a night bird calls, its voice echoing softly. You find your thoughts slowing to match the rhythm. This is the kind of quiet that doesn't demand attention. It just exists. A quirky tidbit floats into your mind as you watch the shoreline. Some Nubian homes included small niches or markings near entrances meant to ward off bad luck or wandering spirits, especially at night. Simple symbols, sometimes just scratches in the mud brick, quietly blending belief with daily life. Historians still argue whether these markings were primarily spiritual, cultural tradition, or simply decorative habits that gained meaning over time. Standing here, it feels like all three at once. The boat glides past a stretch of bank where the land rises slightly, rocky and uneven. The water deepens near the edge, dark and still. Hermack adjusts the pole, keeping the boat centered. You shift your weight carefully, trying not to upset the balance. The riverkeepers barely notice. They're used to worse than a mildly anxious outsider. A light joke bubbles up in your sleepy mind. You whisper, "So this is the scenic route, right?" Hermack glances at you, then at the dark water, then back. "Always," he murmurs, dry as the desert. One of the men suppresses a laugh. The stars continue their slow journey overhead. You notice how different the sky looks here compared to the village. No firelight, no movement, just darkness and stars. It feels deeper somehow. The boat passes another small cluster of houses, this one even quieter than the last. No animals stir, no dogs watch, just sleeping humans and the river flowing past them like a lullaby. You realize something subtle but important. The riverkeepers don't stop at every village. They don't announce themselves loudly. Their presence is meant to be felt, not heard. Like a lock on a door you never think about until it's gone. A mainstream historical fact slides in softly. In many ancient Nile societies, community protection wasn't centralized in large armies or formal police forces, especially in rural areas. Instead, local systems like river watchers handled safety through familiarity and shared responsibility. That shared responsibility hums through the night like a second current beneath the river itself. The boat drifts onward, leaving sleeping villages behind, carrying you deeper into the watch. The night feels calmer now, safer. Or maybe you're just learning how to breathe with it. Either way, the Nile keeps flowing, and you keep drifting. The boat slides into a stretch of river that feels almost intentionally quiet, like the Nile itself has decided to lower its voice. The banks are farther apart here, the water deeper and darker, absorbing sound instead of reflecting it. Even the insects seem to buzz more softly, as if they've agreed to some unspoken nighttime rule. Hermack reaches forward and adjusts the oil lamp. Not brighter, never brighter. Just angled slightly so the flame doesn't flicker in the breeze. Too much light would ruin night vision. Too little, and you miss what's right in front of you. Everything here is about balance. You watch his hands closely now. The way he moves is calm, economical. No wasted motion. The pole is never lifted higher than necessary. The rope is always coiled the same way. The lamp wick is trimmed just so. These are the tools of watching, and none of them are fancy. A mainstream historical fact settles in naturally. Along the Nile, especially in Nubia, night work relied on simple, durable tools, wooden poles, clay lamps fueled with oil or animal fat, woven nets, ropes made from plant fibers. Metal existed, of course, but everyday river labor favored what could be repaired quickly and replaced locally. In other words, if it breaks, you should be able to fix it before sunrise. Hermack hands you the pole. You blink. He gestures again clearly. Your turn. The pole is heavier than it looks. Smooth from years of hands, slightly warped, cool where the night air has touched it. You grip it awkwardly, trying not to look like someone holding a very long mistake. He shows you how, slowly pressing the pole down until it meets resistance, then leaning into it just enough to feel the riverbed without forcing it. Sand feels soft. Mud feels sticky. Stone feels sharp and final. You lower the pole. Sand. You relax a little. You try again. Mud this time. The pole sinks slightly, then stops. Hermack nods. Approval. A rare and powerful currency. A quirky tidbit slips in as you practice. Experienced river workers could identify underwater terrain not just by feel, but by sound, the faint vibration traveling up the pole, the subtle change in resistance. Some even claimed they could tell how recently the riverbed had shifted after floods. Historians still argue how accurate these claims were, but watching Hermack work, it's hard not to believe there's something to it. You probe again. This time the pole taps stone. The sound is soft, but the riverkeepers notice instantly. One of them murmurs something, and the boat shifts slightly away from the spot. You grin, quietly pleased. You did something useful. No one died. Excellent progress. Hermack takes the pole back with a nod, as if to say, good. Don't get cocky. The lamp casts a small circle of light over the water, revealing floating bits of plant matter. Leaves, reeds, the occasional insect skimming the surface. Everything beyond that circle is darkness. The night watch isn't about seeing far.